When I first met my mentor, Mr. Jim Rohn, he said he'd never met a successful person who wasn't an avid reader. He said successful people read and read and read. Their insatiable curiosity makes them want to go out and read every book they can on whatever it is they want to learn. But here's the thing that I had a problem with. I had no problem wanting to read, and I read a lot of books. But I'd read a book like this one, and I'd get to the end and I'd go, I can't remember a thing from that book. And so I realized one of the things I had to do pretty quickly, if I didn't want to just waste my time, was to learn how to get something from every book I read, how to get instant results. How could I apply what I learned here and put it into action right away? And that's what this video is all about. G'day and welcome. My name is Willem, and on this channel I share the philosophies and strategies that Mr. Jim Rohn shared with me over 30 years ago. By consistently applying the philosophies and the strategies that Mr. Rohn shared with me, I've been able to live a life on my terms, and I truly wish the same for you. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, one of the keys that I have found that has allowed me to succeed in business and in life was to learn how to get the maximum from every book I read. And in this video, I want to share with you the 5 strategies that I use whenever I read a book. And I don't actually read a book anymore. I like to call it studying. I study a book. I don't just read it. And so in this video, I want to share with you the 5 strategies that I use to get the maximum result from every book I read. And if you hang around to the end, I will share with you the one book that had a dramatic impact on me when Mr. Rohn first recommended it to me. Let's dive straight in. Strategy 1 is have a really good reason as to why you want to read a book. When I started in business at age 24, this is one of the first books I read. The E-Myth, Why Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It. And I'm so glad I read it. The title had me absolutely curious, and you can see I've still got it in my library. It's one of the early editions. It's falling apart at the seams, but I've still got it in my library. And that book had an enormous impact on me as to the way I thought about business. Because at 24, what do you know? I knew that most small businesses didn't survive. I knew that most small businesses go broke in the first 3 years. So I had a very good reason to read that book. And because I had a good reason, I remembered a lot of it and I internalized it. And I still refer to it today. So that's strategy 1. Have a really good reason as to why you want to read the book it is you're about to read. Now, strategy 2 is do all the exercises. Now, to me, this is one of the primary reasons why people don't get a lot from the books they read. If you're reading a book on how to get healthier, how to get fitter, and at the end of chapter 1 it says, "Dear reader, please close this book, jump on the ground and do me 10 push-ups," and you just keep reading to chapter 2, I'll guarantee you that book is going to be a waste of your time. There's a reason why the author puts a lot of questions or tasks or little things you need to complete in the book. Now, in this book, The Road Less Stupid, and I love this book. I only came across this a few years ago, but Keith Cunningham has been very, very successful in business. He's also lost a lot of money, what he calls paying dumb taxes, and he's written all his lessons down in this one book. And in every chapter, at the end of it, he actually has a section called Thinking Time. And at the end of chapter 20, called, let me see, what is this called again? At the end of chapter 20, Everything Counts. He has a list of questions, as you can see there, Thinking Time. And the first question is, in the last year, how many people tried us and never came back? Now that is a damn good question. If you're in business, that's a question you really should be asking fairly regularly. So if you're reading a non-fiction book, and it's asking you to do an exercise or answer questions at the end of the chapter, don't skip them. And don't say, look, I'm going to read the whole book once and come back to it. I've heard that many, many times as well. Don't. Stop the book, do the questions and answer them. I guarantee you will internalize the material far, far more than if you simply just skip over the questions or the exercises and go to the next chapter. So that's strategy number 2. Do the exercises and the tasks and the assignment that the author asks you to do. Don't miss those, whatever you do. Strategy 3 is highlight and take notes. Now, if you look through all my books, you'll find there's a heap of highlighter pens through them, and there's a whole lot of notes in the side columns. Mr. Rohn said to me, when you read, don't be a follower, be a student. Study what you're reading and debate it with the author. There's nothing like having a healthy debate when you're reading a book. And you'll see a lot of my books have got passages or questions in the side column. As I was actually putting this video together, I was reading an article that said it's good to read 2 different books at the same time. And I said, I just can't see the sense in that. So don't read everything and take it as gospel. Debate it, question it, and have your own opinion on it. Highlight the areas that are most important to you. Strategy 4 is stop at the end of every chapter and reflect on that chapter. Close the book and go, what did I learn in that chapter? And try and put it into your own words. And I found this to be one of the most effective ways to internalize what you did. When I read the E-Myth, I closed the book at the end of every chapter and I thought, okay, what's the point that the author was trying to make there? And I still remember the one thing that I took away from this book that I still use today is to create an organizational chart for any business that you run. Whether it's big or small, or whether you're a solopreneur, create an organizational chart. And I got that idea from this book. And I think that has saved me hundreds and thousands of dollars, in all honesty. So when you finish a chapter, close the book, reflect on it, and try and put into your own words what you've learned. Now, I tend to then reflect and put that into a journal. So I might be reading chapter 3, I'll close the book and I'll write down in my own words what I got from that chapter. Okay, so don't copy what the author's actually said word for word, because you won't internalize it. Summarize the chapter in your own terms. Now, you may only get 1 or 2 ideas out of an entire book, but some of those ideas may stay with you and have an impact on you for the rest of your life. Don't expect that you have to get 20 or 30 ideas from every book. If a book costs you $30 and you get 1 great idea out of that, which might take your business to the next level, that's $30 really well spent. So at the end of every chapter, close it and internalize what you've learned by making a quick summary. The other thing that I do is I actually share what I've learned with other people. Now, I don't want to be too boring. Often I'll go home at the end of a day and I'll say to Jen, listen, I'm reading this book, and what it talks about in keeping people accountable is you've got to do A, B, and C. Now, by sharing what I've learned in the book, I actually tend to remember A, B, and C, which is a lot easier to do than just trying to read the book and remember it. Now, the last way to really internalize what you've just read is to teach it to others. One of the books that had a huge impact on me was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And I have lost track of the number of times I've taught people material from that book, especially the time quadrants, quadrant 1, quadrant 2 activities, being proactive and reactive. I have taught that to so many people, usually members of my team or other people I've met. And it's a great way to really internalize what you've learned. So that's strategy 4. Internalize the chapter you've just read by closing the book, trying to recall or put into your own words what you've just read. Put that summary into a journal, somewhere where you can record it. And then thirdly, teach it to other people. If you've really been impressed by something, if something's really had an impact on you, the way to really carry that through is to now teach it to other people. Now, strategy 5 is execute on what you've just learned. There is no point reading a book if you're not going to act on it. And act on it as quickly as possible. Act on it while you're reading the book. I still remember when I read The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. I started, as soon as I got to the end of chapter 1, I said, okay, I am going to start myself a morning routine and I'm going to use the Savers formula that Rod Elrod outlines in the book. And I started that way with my morning routine. Now, my morning routine has changed enormously since I first implemented it. But I believe that the reason that my morning routine has stuck with me over all these years is because I took action on what I'd learned right away. Mr. Rohn said, take massive action on a good idea. So if you find an idea in a book and you think it's worthwhile, please take action on it. Now, the second point I would make is this: stay with it, because you are now trying to develop new habits in your life. That takes time. So I would suggest you set up a 30-day challenge. Now, one of the best ways I have found to execute on a new idea that you read in a book is to set up a Jerry Seinfeld calendar. So called because Jerry Seinfeld used to keep a calendar and he used to write comedy every day. And at the end of every day, he would put a big red cross on the date, and he said, don't break the chain. The idea was to keep each day going and not break the chain. And I found that is one of the best ways to execute on a new idea that you read in a book. Although ideally you want to do that for 30 days straight, we all know that life gets in the way and there will be problems and you may miss a day. I would strongly encourage you though, if you miss a day, don't miss two. Get back on the wagon, get back in the race, don't miss 2 days in a row. So there's my 5 strategies for getting maximum value from every book you read in the future. Now, I promised you a bonus at the beginning of this video, but before I share with you that bonus, could I ask you to like this video and even consider subscribing to the channel? There's a new video released every week and I have a heap of stuff still to share that Mr. Rohn shared with me all those years ago. Okay, the book that I wanted to share with you that had an enormous impact on me was the very first book that Mr. Rohn ever recommended to me. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon, and it taught me how to become financially independent. I had very little idea about money when I first met Mr. Rohn. I knew how to spend it, but I didn't know how to save it and how to actually make it work for you to the point that you could become financially independent. So there's my bonus tip for you. If you haven't read The Richest Man in Babylon, I would strongly urge you to do so and add it to your library. Now, as you read it, please implement the 5 strategies that I've just shared with you. I promise if you do, miracles will start to happen. Now, if you'd like to watch a video on the key takeaways I got from The Richest Man in Babylon, you can see it right there. I'll put it up there. And there's also a link to it in the instructions below. Now go out and employ these 5 strategies the next time you find a book that's valuable. I promise you will thank me later.